So when you are looking at Desmos, if you click on the little keyboard on the screen and you go to functions, you will actually see sine. Get my cursor here. You'll see sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent, okay? These ones here are the inverse functions, but we only have sine, cosine, and tangent on our graphing calculators. So let me show you how you would do that. So right now I have my calculator in degrees, okay? So if I wanted to do the sine of 30, we see that the sine of 30 is 0.5 or 1/2. So the cosecant of 30 should be the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2. The way I can do that is I can go 1 divided by sine of 30. Whoops. How I probably would do it is I probably would use my fraction button and go alpha y equal and get my fraction. And I would type in 1 over sine of 30. You just want to watch order of operation sometimes when you're entering things in, and it would give me the 2. You can also do sine of 30. And then this is where you have to be careful. I am not using this button. This is the inverse. Okay, I'm not raising it to -1. That's not what this button does. This finds the angle value for sine of a particular amount or cosine or tangent. This gives us the angles. That is sine, cosine, tangent, inverse. But what I want is I can raise this to a -1, and that would give me my answer. Another option, I can do sine of 30, and this button right here does the same thing. Instead of raising it to the second power or raising it to any power, it raises it to the negative first power. So that automatically types that in. So any of those would be how I would do that. You do not do sine inverse of 30, okay? This is gonna say error to me because sine, the maximum sine value is 30, is 1. So when I put sine 30, it's saying 30 sine of what angle gives me 30, and that's impossible. Okay, the most my sine will ever be is 1. So again, this button right here, the sine inverse, is not the same as cosecant. It is not the same as raising something to an actual negative first power. It is an inverse button. So again, back to that sheet, the set of notes, here is a reminder of each of those. Cosecant, you would be doing reciprocal of sine or 1 over sine, or sine of that angle raised literally to the negative first, not sine inverse. Secant, you'd be dealing with cosine, sorry, and cotangent, you'd be dealing with tangent. So now the next thing I'd like to talk about, and again, a little note here at the bottom, not the button that has those. That is not what you use. So I'm going to go to what would be the backside if we had this in our composition book, and we're going to try some of these problems, okay? So again, this would be something that you would be writing down and turning into me, okay? So for this, if I'm at pi thirds, okay, and I'm thinking about my unit circle. Now, let me just put the 3 little dots that I've been putting for you guys on the paper. So this would be 30, 45, 60. Well, in terms of radians, this is pi 6, pi fourths, pi thirds. So I would actually be, let me just get a different color here. I would be actually right here at this point, okay? This would be the angle that I'm looking at, okay? But what are the coordinates of that point? So that point is going to be at short, comma, long. So that point's going to be short, 1/2, long, root 3/2. And that would be the answer that they want if they wanted the point where pi thirds is. Now for 5 pi fourths, okay, 5 pi fourths, Going all the way to here would be pi, which is 4 pi 4. So I'm going to be in this quadrant. My force is my center one. So I'm actually going to be starting here. I'm going to be ending here, but I care about the coordinates of this point. Where am I? Now I'm at negative comma negative, and this one is root 2 halves, root 2 halves, because my force are always going to be my 45 degrees, which is isosceles. So I'm going to get a negative, just get a little smaller writing. So this is going to be a negative root 2 halves, comma, negative root 2 halves. And that's what that point is. That's the answer to this one. Okay. So now I'm going to be finding all 6 of them for pi halves. Now pi halves, okay, let me draw my unit circle. Okay, pi halves is going to be right up here at the tippy top. And the coordinates of that point are going to be 0, comma 1. So let me just write 0, comma 1. That is the coordinates of that point. And a little reminder, it's always cosine of your angle, comma sine of your angle. Okay, x, y. So here when they want sine, sine is going to be the y coordinate, which is 1. Cosine is going to be the x coordinate, which is 0. Tangent, remember, was rise over run, y over x. So I'm just going to make myself a little note, y over x, okay? Well, that's what we first learned was tangent back in the day. We called it the slope angle, right? So my y is 1, my x is 0, and 1 over 0 is undefined. So if I was to type in tangent of pi halves, it's going to give me error, okay? So just to show you on my calculator, I need to change it to radians. So I'm going to get it into radians, get my mode to radians. Okay, and then I'm going to type in tangent of pi, and I'm going to do it this way, pi halves. Now, when you have a number in front of this, let's say I had 3 pi halves or 5 pi halves, I would want 5 pi in parentheses divided by 2, or put it in as a fraction and it will do the proper order of operation. And you see it gives me error, okay? Because 0 is on the bottom and that's undefined. Now, my cosecant, remember sine, s does not go with s. So this is the reciprocal. So this is going to be 1 over 1, which is 1. This is going to be the reciprocal. So this is really 0 over 1. So this is 1 over 0, which is undefined. My cotangent is going to be the reciprocal of this. So that's going to be 0 over 1, and 0 over 1 is 0. And those are my 6 values for sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent of pi halves. And did all that just from my unit circle. So now we're going to do the same thing at negative 2 pi thirds. Okay, so let me just move this. So now we're going to be dealing with negative 2 pi thirds. Let me get a unit circle again. We're going around the unit circle. I'm going backwards. So let me just get my little 3 marks that I usually like to give you guys, okay? So I'm going negative 2 pi thirds, okay? So this would be negative pi thirds. This one here is negative 2 pi thirds. So I am right here. That's where I am. And the coordinates of this point, it's short, comma, long. Short, negative 1/2 because it's in quadrant 3. Okay, comma long, negative root 3 halves. That is your x and your y, that's your sine and your cosine. So my sine is a negative root 3 over 2. My cosine is a negative 1 over 2. Now my tangent is going to be y over x. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit for this, okay? So I'm going to be taking this over this, okay? I'm going to write it and then I'm going to erase it. I'm going to rewrite it differently. But it's really negative root 3 halves over negative 1 half. That's what I'm doing. Well, when I'm doing this and I'm dividing by a fraction, I can multiply by the reciprocal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take negative root 3 over 2, and I am dividing it by a negative 1 half, which means I multiply by the reciprocal. My 2's cancel out. Negative times negative is a positive, and I get a positive root 3. That is my tangent. Okay. So now when I come over and do these, my cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of my sine. So it's going to be a negative 2 over root 3, but I need to rationalize. We don't like that root 3 on bottom. I'm going to times the bottom by root 3. I'm going to times the top by root 3. I get negative 2 root 3 over 3. My secant is going to be reciprocal of this, which is just negative 2. That's kind of my easy one. My cotangent is going to be reciprocal of 1 over root 3. Now, again, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by root 3 to rationalize it. So I get root 3 over 3. And that is my cotangent. So again, I just found all 6 values of all the trig for negative 2 pi thirds. Okay. On a problem like this, okay, 3 pi, okay, and 11 pi halves. Again, I don't care for this how many times I go around a circle. I care where do I end up. So if I'm dealing with 3 pi, okay, kind of the trick with pi, when it's like a whole number pi, this would be 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi. Over here, these are always your odd. Over here, this is always your even. So when I see 3 pi, since it's odd, I know I'm going to be right here. And the coordinates of this point, let me write the coordinates. This is not my answer, but that's going to help me, is negative 1 comma 0. And my cosine is my x, so my answer is negative 1. That is my answer, not this, okay? Cosine of 3 pi halves, 3 pi is negative 1. My sine, okay, 11 pi halves. Okay, so again, going around the unit circle, okay. So this is 2 pi halves, 4 pi halves, 6 pi halves, 8 pi halves, 10 pi halves, 11 pi halves would be right down here. So I'm going to be down here again. I don't care how many times I went around. Where did I end up? I ended up here. And this point is 0 comma negative 1. And my sine is my y coordinate. So my answer is negative 1. Now the last bit is putting these into your calculator. Now they do not have the word radian. This one has pi, so you see it's in radians, but if they do not have a degree symbol, you assume it's radian. So you want to make sure your calculator is in radians, okay? And then if I'm going to be putting this first one, cotangent, the way I would write it is I would really type in 1, whoops, got on higher, 1 over tangent of 1. Okay, and then I put that in my calculator. So I can do 1 divided by, but again, I'm just going to use the fraction button. So I'm going to do alpha y equal, and I'm going to go 1 over tan of 1. Again, making sure your calculator is in radians. They want 4 numbers after the decimal, so 0.6421. 0.6421. Secant, remember, S does not go with S. So if this is an S, that means it's going to be a cosine. So cosine of 1.8. Okay, that's what I'm going to be putting in my calculator. Turn that up. Okay, and I'm going to write the answer down here. So again, I'm going to go 1, I'm going to do fraction. I'm going to go 1 over cosine of 1.8. And I end up with negative 4.4014. So negative 4.4014. That would be that answer. Cosecant, C doesn't go with C, so this is going to be sine. Now, for this one, again, I'm going to enter it in using my fractions, but if I'm not, I really have to be careful with this 9 pi over 11. You can't go 9 pi divided by 11. It's 9 pi in parentheses divided by 11. So I'm going to use my fraction button twice, okay? So I'm going to do fraction, okay, 1 over sine, and then I'm going to do fraction, and I'm going to type in 9 pi, because if I don't, I would need parentheses around the 9 pi and then divided by the 11. But if I do it like this, whoops, it'll do the proper order of operation. And I get 1.8497. So 1.8497. So this is the end of today's notes. I do apologize about the confusion earlier today with the Zoom and Google Meet. So I will be posting this, and you have 2 assignments. One that is on its homework number, it's called Finding the Exact Value, which is posting today. The other one, which will post the next day, will be on unit circle practice. I want us to practice doing this. That's why I'm giving us 2 assignments, because we need to just practice, 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 so it becomes second nature to us. And this is the end of our notes.